Yeah.
Hi, I'm Abby King. I'm a European Studies student from Royal Holloway University. I voted and campaigned for Remain. I think at the moment the negotiations are going pretty shockingly. We've seen in the recent week just gone that how reliant Theresa May is on such a small radical minority party, and I don't think any of the negotiators really have a clear idea. There's just so much uncertainty, and I'm not sure where we go from here.
Shockingly. What would you say, Stephen? Do you introduce yourself? Hello.
So I'm Stephen Canning. I'm a Conservative councillor for Essex. I supported Remain during the referendum, and I think the negotiations are being hard. They're complex, but I think we've clearly found some common ground between ourselves and those we're negotiating with. And I think we ultimately will come to a conclusion soon.
Soon. Well, there's a deadline of next week on the first phase, as you know. Do you think Theresa May is capable of finding a solution before then?
I think she most certainly is, and I think we've seen that there obviously is progress. There's progress being made. There's still differences to what we want and
what progress do you see being made on this border issue?
I think the fact that there's been so much noise and discussion over the last couple of days shows that we are close to a solution, and perhaps there are others that don't want us to be getting as close as we are getting and get as good deal as we might be getting, and are perhaps trying to throw obstacles in the way.
Tricia, you said at the beginning of the programme Theresa May is not a good negotiator. Do introduce yourself.
Excuse me. Hello, I'm Tricia Gulliver. I come from Bromley and I'm a member of UKIP. I obviously voted to leave. I think that no, I just think it's a complete and utter shambles, and when you're negotiating for anything, you put your cards on the table, you say, this is what I want, and then let the other person say whether you're going to get it or not, and if you're not going to get it and you can't come to an agreement, you walk away.
Well, she did do that. She did do that with the European Union, and they said, yeah, OK, we'll go for that. But actually, it was the Democratic Unionist Party who are supposed to support her. So it wasn't the people that she's negotiating with, it's the people who she might have expected to support her.
Well, that's now, isn't it? That's only just happened. We are talking about 18 months ago when we had the referendum. And it's taken a long time to just get to here, where we are now.
Just to say, we may interrupt the conversation because the Brexit Secretary, David Davis, is giving evidence to a select committee this morning in Parliament, where he's going to answer questions about why 58 impact assessments, that's assessments on different sectors of the economy after Brexit, have not been released in full. Some bits have been edited out or redacted or whatever adjective you want to use. So we'll dip into some of that when he starts talking. But let's carry on our conversation. Good morning, Stuart. Hello, do introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Stuart. I come from Sydney Morning, Kent. I voted to leave, but I think the negotiations are a bit muddled and we're not quite sure where we want to go yet. We have a rough idea where we're going to go, but the Northern Ireland border is more of an issue, as you say, with the DUP partners. It seems to be that, but overall, that shouldn't really be a problem because there should be a natural majority for an agreement to be passed for the border in the Parliament without having to go through the governing party.
Who can see a solution that perhaps politicians haven't seen when it comes to this border issue? Anybody?
I can see a solution. Sorry, my name's Dami.
Don't apologise.
A commentator and a master's student at Warwick University. I voted leave. I think the solution is that Theresa May eventually agrees to everything that the EU is asking for, because this isn't a negotiation. They've set out red lines, and she doesn't have much wiggle room in that respect. She's already given up what she said she wasn't going to give up as a financial settlement, which David Davis last year said that he wouldn't agree to. It looks like they've now agreed to it. And the way to solve this problem is just to agree with what the EU wants and move the process forward in that way.
Well, the EU wants Britain to stay in the EU.
That's not what they're saying to us at the moment. At the moment, they're saying you voted to leave so you can leave. And this is how we're going to go about the negotiations. So until we have this Irish issue settled, we can't move forward. And eventually...
And do you think that's fair enough, or do you think that... Or,
No, I
or
don't.
we should be able to move forward with some kind of fudged words just to start the trade talks, and we can sort out the Irish border issue later down the line.
Well, I don't think the EU have necessarily made it very easy for the UK in these negotiations, but I don't think that was the role of the EU. The role of the EU was to protect its own interests, in the same way the role of the UK is to protect its own interests. So people who are upset about the way that the EU has handled negotiations shouldn't be upset. If you're going to throw people into chaos like this, then you shouldn't be upset about the way they try and defend themselves.
The Irish issue is not a real issue. What you're doing
I
in the
think it is a real
negotiations...
issue.
Sorry, Alpesh Patel, I'm a fund manager here in London, so I see a lot of investments coming into the UK.
And will you leave or remain?
I was remain, but now I've changed my mind, having seen what's happened to the market, seen what's happened to inward investment into the United Kingdom.
So you can't wait for Britain to get out, effectively?
Oh, I can wait, because it costs a lot of money to negotiate for speed. The DUP issue is a ruse. Anybody who's done any negotiations will know the easiest thing in the world to do is to say, look, it's not me, the people behind me are making things difficult, you have to give me more concessions. We know that the Europeans don't want a border, we don't want a border, but it's the best leverage we've got to say, oh, it's the DUP. What you're seeing... I'm sorry.
So you think that Arlene Foster of the DUP is making it up? I mean,
no, I think our negotiating team is saying to the EU, yeah, we've got difficulties back home in closed rooms.
I'm not sure that's right. She was having lunch with Jean-Claude Juncker. It was coming to an end.
And everybody wants an open border.
Before that meal is over.
Everybody wants an open border.
A call that she wasn't expecting.
In every negotiation, you always blame somebody else and your hands are tied, and that's all we're doing, and that's why a deal wasn't done.
Tell me, I'm interested that you've changed your mind because of the effect on the industry you work in.
Not just my industry.
OK, but because of the falling pound, what difference has it made to you? Explain to the nation what you do.
More broadly, beyond what I do as a fund manager, when I look at the investments coming to the United Kingdom, coming into London, from people like Facebook, Google, Apple, but throughout the rest of the UK, the falling pound has made it cheaper for overseas investors to invest here. When I'm out in places like Singapore, Hong Kong, India, I was so shocked how keen they are to invest because the pound has dropped. We've still got all the talent in the UK, and this is not rhetoric because I was a Remainer. When I speak to those businesses, they're so pleased we're getting out of what they see as a protectionist group in Europe so that they can invest in this country. And you know what? Money talks. They're investing.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Nemi. I am an executive director at a business group, London First, and we were an official Remain campaigning organisation. It's really interesting that you talk about talent. Now, by no objective measure are these talks going well for Theresa May at the moment, but she has in her gift one thing she can do, and that is to provide unilaterally assurance that the 3 million EU citizens who are currently living here will have the right to remain after we leave.
How big an issue is that for London businesses?
It's a huge issue for all businesses. We have EU workers doing brilliant things all around the country. You know, we have brilliant business owners like Cornelius here. They're paying taxes and they are creating jobs. What she could do, and this would strengthen her arm in negotiations because it would be such a gesture of goodwill to just unilaterally say, we're going to enshrine in law the cut-off date and exactly what those rights are going to be for EU workers who are currently here already.
How do you read it?
I thought the most striking thing, I don't know if you saw Hilary Benn, the Labour chairman of the committee, as he was listening to David Davis, and his mouth was kind of, he was stunned that there are no impact assessments on the effect of Brexit on key areas of the UK economy. You're saying, well, what about the automotive sector? Or what about aerospace? What about the financial services? And David Davis saying, no, 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 no. His argument seems to be they've got so much to do with Brexit, it would actually be a waste of their resources to start compiling these reports. And secondly, what they're trying to do is get some huge overarching trade deal, so they don't want to get bogged down in individual areas. However, I guarantee you there will be plenty of Brexit critics who will say, well, this just goes to show the government hasn't got a clue what it's doing. It hasn't done the spade work to look at what is going to be the impact of Brexit on major parts of the British economy. So I suspect there's going to be a right old row about this.
Cheers, Norman. Thank you. Right, OK. back to our mini audience of voters, both Leave and Remain voters, a number of business people amongst you. How do you react to that news, Naomi, that there are no individual sector analyses on the car industry, on aerospace, on financial services? We don't know what the impact of Brexit will be on those areas.
Well, of course, those sectors have been doing their own work, and there's barely a business in the land that hasn't done some kind of forecasting as to the impact it's going to have on it.
But how do you react to this confirmation from the Brexit Secretary that the government hasn't been doing this work?
Well, it is surprising. I don't think many of us could get away with pretending that we'd done something and then having to admit that we haven't done something in our jobs. I don't think business will react kindly to it. But of course, the biggest impact on business is, as I've mentioned earlier, this impact on talent. Businesses need to know whether they're going to be able to keep their EU workers here or not.
All right. Cornelius, how do you react to the fact that David Davis is saying the government has not undertaken an assessment on a sector-by-sector basis of the impact of Brexit?
Hi, first of all, my name is Cornelius. To introduce myself, I'm from Chingford, North London. As a businessman, I can tell you for sure, we already affected, and all businesses will be affected by Brexit.
So it doesn't matter to you that the government hasn't done this?
It doesn't matter, yes.
How do you say you're being affected?
In many ways. And also, I think all businesses somehow are affected, and they will be very, very bad also affected.
Well, it's good news for the gentleman sitting next to you. In what way are you being affected as a small businessman?
Well, first of all, it's very difficult to find the staff now to work. It's very difficult to, as you probably, as Naomi said, it's very, very difficult in many kind of, I mean, it's...
OK, I want to get more reaction, if I may, from you.
That it's difficult to get staff now.
Trish, before we get into that, I just want to get reaction to the fact that the government has confirmed that they haven't done these sector-by-sector assessments. What do you say, Stuart?
Well, we need to know what is going on, basically. Particularly if we do end up crashing out of the EU, which would be a nightmare scenario, if we're honest with each other, for the economy overall.
Not a nightmare scenario for some people, but what David Davis seemed to be saying was there are so many different options. There's walking away without a deal, there's the various things that have been discussed this week. There's no point doing a sector-by-sector assessment because it wouldn't necessarily be accurate.
I think he's being dishonest. I think that there's a catalogue of quotes which Hilary Benn was referring to that have Mr Davis and other ministers speaking about the impact assessments as they were. I think what they believed at the time was that they would never have to reveal them to the public, and so could big them up more than they were. So they had done maybe some analysis of sector by sector, but not on as a resulting of the Brexit on those sectors, but only on the current stages of those sectors in relation to how Brexit should be negotiated.
OK, you're a Remainer, Stephen. You're also a Conservative councillor. Are you taken aback by that?
Not at all. I think, Labour's...
It's all right for the government not to do their homework on this.
Well, I think Hilary Benn is actually using semantics to score political points here. What has been said is that the government has done broad brush analysis of the whole economy and the effect on entire swathes of the economy, and that is good preparation for a wide-ranging trade deal.
But first there were 50 assessments, then there were 58, and then there were impact assessments, and now he's disputing the definition of an impact assessment. Do you think he's been honest in the presentation of what analysis he's done?
That is the true version.
I think he's most certainly being honest. I think this is a fast-moving negotiation, one of the most complex ever. As you say, businesses are doing their own work, and I'm sure are providing information in and out of government all the time. The government can help use it to support
Yes,
this.
we saw the House Builders Federation say yesterday that we have a housing crisis, and unless we get certainty for the EU bricklayers and plasterers and plumbers, we are not going to be able to build all of the homes that the government in the budget said we need.
Yeah, I just find it quite almost amusing that we heard from Liam Fox that earlier in this year or late last year how these negotiations were going to be the easiest and simplest negotiations ever, and then we see this from David Davis as a Labour Party member. This is not the strength and stability we were promised from
Let me read some messages from people watching around the country. David emails, for crying out loud, just call the whole thing off. This is too difficult. Brian, quite simply, the Brexit process is a shambles. Sue, David Davis lied to the EU exiting Brexit committee. Kel Surprise, no impact assessments carried out. I think that's what he said, as he wasn't really speaking the plain English I was taught at school. Thomas tweets this, I'm not sure I'm surprised at all that. the fact that David Davis is right now telling a select committee that the government hasn't undertaken any sector-by-sector Brexit impact reports. It's entirely consistent with the shambolic trajectory of the Conservatives. You said you changed your mind.
Yeah.
You were a Remainer. You're now very. You can't. You know. You're looking forward to leaving. Anyone else change their mind?
Yep.
Stuart.
I was a leaver, but I would be more tempted to vote Remain now.
If there was another vote.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Yes, yeah. You know, I supported a campaign for the Remain campaign, and I think we've seen the fantastic opportunities that are opening up since we've been negotiating Brexit, and we haven't even left yet. There already are opportunities that have been opened there. I was in.
Do you acknowledge that for a lot of people costs have gone up because of the
cost in other areas also fallen? I was in.
Sure.
I was in Malaysia only a couple of weeks ago.
Because of the falling value of the pound, imports are more expensive.
No, we've had import substitution. You look at your shopping basket, and that has not changed in any significant way since, because you just substitute the products.
It's more expensive.
Based on inflation, not on the falling value of the pound.
We're missing the most important part.
This is in the short term. In the long term, it will be very, very
We're missing the most important part here. This is all about opening us up to the world. You know, so I went overseas to Malaysia recently, where I was talking to people in Kuala Lumpur who were saying it's very apparent that actually it's easier for UK businesses to do business in a place like Malaysia than it is to do business with France, because we share legal systems with them, we share languages, we share.
How was the exchange rate?
So that it be
In our favour for inward investment. That's why the Malaysians are investing in Battersea.
On a business
Billions.
level, I'm talking on a level of British people who want to go on holiday.
Guess what? When those businesses
How is the
invest,
exchange rate?
sorry, your holidays are
That
interrupted.
we went to Europe then before we were in the European Union.
Absolutely.
Does anybody here
at all.
want another referendum to check the will of the British people is the same as the one 18 months ago?
Yes.
You want another
more,
one?
please.
There's no need for another referendum. That's not the right way to go about it. But it should be acknowledged that twice British people have been asked what they wanted to do with Europe, and twice they said they weren't really sure. First time was 52-48. That's not a very conclusive result. And the second time was a hung parliament. So no, I think it's quite clear that there's no big kind of decision that is being
Okay.
Advisory referendum.
I'm going to
and there was
stop
nothing
it there.
on the ballot paper
We're
about
not.
leaving
We're
the
not.
single market
We're,
and customs union.
we're not going to rerun those old arguments. But thank you.